Clix's and Peterbot's trio have by far been the two most consistent teams in North America Central, and both were heavy favorites to win the FNCS Grand Finals title. However, this particular Grand was filled with a ton of controversy, a ton of drama and excitement, and a photo finish that went down in the 12th game, making this the most entertaining competitive Fortnite tournament we've ever seen in the history of the game. Day number 1 was a slow start for both teams, as when Peterbot is in the endgame here, he ends up getting caught completely off guard, having an opportunity to take down Reed here, but he ends up whipping the shot, leaving his team to duo clutch. Ritual is going to pick off Higgs, and eventually they are going to jump in with Cold onto another opponent. Cold goes down, and Ritual is left to solo clutch, and he gets a respectable 16 in 5th as a solo, and his team starts off the day in 5th. Clix and Iamzo, who are left essentially trioless after Higgs ends up going down, don't get a significant amount of points, and they end up starting the day in 8th. In game number 2, Peterbot's trio has a massive improvement. They are on the high ground in this endgame, looking to easily cruise to a victory royale, but when Peterbot goes for this refresh, he doesn't account for an opponent behind him, ends up getting pinched and going down. Eventually, Cold and Ritual are left to duo clutch, but they do jump in on that opponent, secure that elimination, go back up to the high ground. They stay on the high ground for the rest of the endgame, Cold using the mythic drum gun to pick up on eliminations, and he does a great job of picking up the last two, securing the victory royale as a duo for this team, netting them all the way into first. On the other hand, Clix and Iamzo do not have that great of a game, as they end up only picking up 4 eliminations and placing 8th. After Clix goes down, taking the zip line here, Higgs gets stuck in the storm, and Iamzo with no builds unfortunately gets spotted out, and this trio did move up into 7th. Game number 3, Clix is going to shift the tide his way. In the endgame, they are doing incredibly well, stacking up eliminations, and on the same layer, they start to pressure Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual. This is going to be fantastic as they're forced to pause, and they essentially end up getting pinched between another team, and Peterbot's trio ends up going down in 5th. Clix, Higgs, and Iamzo are then going to absolutely maximize their low ground here, picking up eliminations on solos, eventually leaving it to a 3v3 situation. Higgs here, unfortunately, when he tries to do this jump shot, is going to go down, but Clix is going to go huge here, breaking this floor, spraying with the AR, and picking up this elimination. Now, in a 2v2 situation, Iamzo does a very nice job of jumping out, cracking the shield, and Clix is there to support, but he ends up going down to Storm, turning it into a 1v1, but Clix is going to clutch up here as Muzz jumps on his head, and he's able to pick up that elimination, securing this 14 elim victory royale, and they end up going into 2nd place, still behind Peterbot's trio. In game number 4, Clix is going to continue to build off the momentum secured from the win in last game. Peterbot and their trio are trying to make a comeback, but Peterbot once again makes a mistake, over-aggressing for a kill, and ends up going down, leading his team to duo clutch. They're going to continue to maneuver through the zones, picking up some eliminations here, but Cold one on the slower layer gets caught off guard and ends up getting eliminated, leaving Ritual to solo clutch, and he ends up picking up a respectable 6 elim 5th, but unfortunately for them, Clix and Higgs and Iamzo are still going. Now, Clix in this game is going to go down before the moving zones even start, as they were down to Surge, and he ends up getting caught off guard, leaving Iamzo and Higgs to duo clutch this entire endgame. A fantastic performance from this duo allows them to make it to the endgame here, and Higgs is going to do a great job taking the Bob, and eventually, with his patience, he's able to sit in this box here, secure a 2nd place, and now Clix's trio is tied with Peterbot's trio, with Peterbot only getting the edge due to having 1 more elimination at this time. After that, 2nd place is by Clix's trio. Both of these trios now are exactly neck and neck. Peterbot's trio is once again looking in this game primed to win the game, as they are on the high ground here, but everything goes to disaster as Ritual, while on the high ground, ends up getting pressured from a team down below, and a team backside in zone is able to take him out, forcing Peterbot to essentially have to give up the high ground as Cold ends up going down. Peterbot is going to do his absolute best, trying to secure a solo clutch, is able to pick up 1 elimination here, but makes another very rare mistake as he mistimes at taking the flopper here and switching to his Jug. It never actually ended up registering, so we end up going down to Storm. As you can see, Clix, Higgs, and Iamzo are actually still in this game, and Clix, who ended up going down, unfortunately, to a bat player, leaves Higgs and Iamzo in the rest of the endgame. This duo is once again going to have a massive clutch, as they're able to win the 2v1v1, securing a victory royale and bumping this trio into 1st place, going into the last day of day 1 with a fairly comfortable lead at 37 points. In game number 6, Peterbot is going to make the best ever competitive play call in the history of competitive Fortnite. In game number 6, he realized that Clix's trio has a significant amount of momentum and he needs to make a play to stop it. So instead of staying in his drop at Crime City, he makes the very intelligent play to go to this porta body that will teleport them close to Lone Wolf. He does this at the same time telling Ritual to stay back in Crime City, who has a medallion, because it would have revealed their location to Clix, Higgs, and Yamzo, who were up in their search towers trading. He's going to sneak up onto Higgs here, who somehow didn't spot him out, and Peterbot is able to start off with a damage advantage. He is then going to pressure other teams, but Cold is going to go massive here as he ends up pushing Higgs essentially in a 2v3, and he pre-boxes him beautifully and one-pumps him, turning this into a 3v2 situation. As Peterbot plays incredibly aggressive, Clix tries to retreat, uses all of his materials here, and Peterbot takes advantage, and as he goes into the shed with no mats, he's able to clean this up, decimating this trio's surge and completely altering the game plan for the rest of the game. Now, there is some controversy after this ended up happening, as Peterbot ends up going into a cone here. At this point, he was accused of stream sniping, as Yamzo, who ended up going to their own drop of Crime City, ended up picking up the reboots with the gold, buying them, and then getting 2 players up. Peterbot, knowing this, ends up deciding to W-key them, eventually chasing them all over the map, and Higgs once again is going to get caught, and now Peterbot has once again destroyed their surge. Yamzo is going to go back to the southern portion of the map at Meadows and pick up this teammate, but at this point this trio has no surge. And this is going to work out beautifully, as Clix, Higgs, and Yamzo have a maximum distance pull and had to continually fight for surge, draining their heals, and at this point they go down before the end game and they don't get any points at all, leaving Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual a prime opportunity to finally get back into first place. Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual do not miss out capitalizing on this opportunity which they created. They make it to the end game here, and this trio decides it is a perfect time to frag out, as eventually Peterbot is left as a solo, already with a significant amount of eliminations, hitting a fantastic slide shot onto this opponent, and eventually going down a little bit later in 6th place. However, this trio ended up picking up 13 eliminations and denying Clix any points at all. When day number 1 wrapped up, they were going into game number 6 down by a significant margin of 37 points, and at the end of game number 6, they were up by 51. This is a huge swing of points, as this was a net 88 difference in points and going to be the difference in this tournament. In game number 7, the first game of day number 2, Clix is going to do a good job of closing the gap. Peterbot in this endgame is going to jump down with his teammates, but unfortunately for him, they both end up getting fried to high ground here, leaving him as a solo. And unfortunately, he gets completely caught off guard in terms of awareness and gets pre-edited from behind, going down, leaving Clix, Higgs, and Yamzo an opportunity. This trio essentially makes it to the very last portion of their endgame here with a decent amount of eliminations, and they are going to make an all or nothing play with the bats, trying to get into this trio's box. They end up going down here, but they have now closed the gap from 2nd and 1st place to a minuscule 6 points after game number 7. Game number 8 is going to be fantastic for both trios. Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual are primed on the high ground here to secure another victory royale, but they end up getting contested, and after Ritual ends up going down, Cold is going to make an aggressive play in the box here, but unfortunately ends up getting one pump, leaving Peterbot to solo clutch. He's going to remain on the high ground here and pick up some eliminations on the solo teams, and he ends up nearly 1v3ing after catching Higgs off guard here, turning it into a 1v2, but Yamzo hits a very nice jump shot, and now the gap between the two teams has even decreased from 6 points to 3, with Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual just barely hanging on. Game number 9 is a weaker game for both trios, as Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual eventually are all going to get suffocated on the side of the hill here while picking up some eliminations, and they ended up finishing in 9th place. On the other hand, Clix, Higgs, and Yamzo were in a much worse situation, as Higgs ended up going down before the first moving zone when Booga jumped into his box and he was unable to shoot down the body effectively, leaving this for Clix and Yamzo to end up duo clutching. Clix, when he runs out of materials, is going to go down after some pressure, and Yamzo is going to do the best he can in this situation, but he gets spotted out on the low ground as a solo and ends up going down in 10th place, just one outside of Peterbot, and now Peterbot's trio is able to widen the lead just a bit, but not by a significant margin. In game number 10, things are going to start off once again with some unfortunate controversy. The team, dead last in 33rd place, makes the horrible decision to land at Clix and Higgs' drop, and instead of fighting them, they just steal loot and run. The third member of this trio unfortunately lands at Crime City, and instead of running and stealing loot, he essentially gives Peter free 4 points and Surge by taking the worst balloon battle in Fortnite history and going down to cold. Despite this unfortunate off-spawn situation, Clix's trio is still going to find a way to rise to the occasion. It is now in the endgame here, and Peterbot and his trio are on the high ground, but they run low on materials, and Peterbot is forced to make an all-or-nothing play, jumping in on this trio and going down, leaving his teammates to duo clutch. Iamzo is now the only one left on his trio here, and this solo clutch is going to be the best of the entire tournament. Stuck on the low ground, essentially pinched between the duo of Ritual and Cold. Cold is going to hit him with a massive shot here after he ends up cracking Ritual's shield, and he hits a fantastic free fire onto Cold, wiping that trio when Ritual went down to another opponent, now giving him the opportunity to close the gap. He's going to play this endgame incredibly well, once again hitting a fantastic free fire here onto Kanata to gain some more placement points and an elimination. And Iamzo is going to do the absolute best job here. When an opponent tries to double bat him, he's able to secure the elimination, clutching up a second and multiple eliminations, and this now gives his trio the opportunity to close the gap, which was starting to widen. Game number 11 is going to be filled with controversy as the team in last place switches up their strategy slightly as one of the members completely lands randomly and 2 of the members land at Crime City. In an obvious disadvantage of a 3v2, Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual clean up this fight incredibly fast, gifted a ton of free Surge as well as 8 points in terms of eliminations. They're going to use this momentum that they continued from the early game, and eventually, after being on the side of this mountain here, all 3 of the trio are going to go down relatively fast. Unfortunately, Clix, Higgs, and Iamzo were not able to overcome this off-spawn deficit, as Higgs in the middle of this moving rotation is left to go down, and they are now left to duo clutch. This duo is going to do a respectable job of picking up a couple of eliminations on the low ground here, and Clix is left to solo clutch, but unfortunately he ends up going down, and the gap now between Peterbot and Clix's trio going to the last game is a manageable but difficult 35 points. Game number 12 is going to shape up to be one of the most exciting and strategic games in competitive Fortnite history. Both trios know that they are within striking distance of each other, but they make the decision to not land on each other. Clix, Higgs, and Iamzo actually play incredibly aggressive in this match here, getting a good amount of Surge on early eliminations around teams that are trying to get into the black market. After this, they are going to make an incredibly aggressive push onto Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual's trio to try and end it and see if they can overtake first place. Peterbot initially makes the very intelligent decision to take a porta potty to meet up the rest of his team, who was running away from this engagement, smartly making sure that they don't throw away their game. Once they reset this fight, Peterbot and his trio is going to W key over onto Clix and Iamzo, essentially putting their fight on their terms. And fortunately for both trios, this fight is going to stalemate after Clix ends up getting his shield cracked, but no team end up fully committing, and this is going to be disastrous for both of the team's Surge, which will come into play a little bit towards the mid-game. Since Clix, Higgs, and Iamzo decided to not use their typical Surge trading strategies, they are down below on Surge, and they decide to take an engagement into Seaport City. After making a very aggressive play with the bat, Clix is going to go down, but before Iamzo goes down, he ends up picking up 2 eliminations, turning this into a true 1v1 situation. Higgs is going to clutch up in the biggest way possible, as he's able to revive Iamzo here, and Iamzo goes huge, picking up the elimination onto that last opponent, but Higgs is going to maybe make the biggest minor mistake of his career, as instead of throwing down a chug splash to get up Clix in the situation, he ends up popping the big pot, allowing Clix to go down, which causes them to not only be shorthanded, but lose his Surge, and the zone is a maximum hold distance. Things are going to shape up to a final battle between these trios, leaving Seaport City. Eventually, they are going to see this opponent swimming in the water here, getting a significant amount of damage. Unbeknownst to them, this is Peterbot, Cold, and Ritual, and when they push up here, eventually Iamzo is going to get this elimination to Peterbot's trio, who was down below Storm Surge because of the earlier hitting W key. After picking up that elimination, as they're trying to rotate out, they see in the feed that Cold ends up going down to Storm Surge and Storm, and Ritual is going to end up getting third party by Rice, turning this into a trio wipe. Now unfortunately, because they were so late in rotating, Higgs and Iamzo are forced to split up heals, and Higgs unfortunately ends up continuing to go in the middle of the 5-tick instead of popping the Chug Jug, and they are unfortunately going to go down here, losing by 11 points. Never in the history of Grand Finals have we had two teams essentially battle for first and second all the way from Game 1 to Game 12. There were so many other aspects of this entire Grands that made it by far the best we've ever seen. After Peterbot made it the most aggressive and best played call in Fortnite history, did he cheaping it by stream sniping by sitting in this cone to go exactly where Iamzo revived? Or was it possible that Peterbot only won because he was granted 12 free elimination points from a team that essentially just wanted to ruin their reps? And would Clix, Higgs, and Iamzo been able to get out of that storm by eliminating Peterbot faster if Higgs had not screwed up the Chug Splash play and instead of taking the big pot, would have this trio been able to get in and maybe overtake in the last game? Well guys, I hope that you enjoyed today's Grand Finals recap. If you did, please drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on post notifications. And I hope I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.